lot to cover. We'll see if we can get it off. Not, we'll leave off next week. What I wanted to do, how many of you know have seen the famous movies where somebody's dying or something and they're like, well, it all started here and it goes back. Dad said he always hated those movies. One of the most famous of all time, I don't know if you've ever seen Citizen Kane. He says Rosebud, and the whole movie, what does this mean? And I think in the end it turns out it shows him as a little boy playing with his family, and he's got a new sled, it's got Rosebud. Basically all he was saying was, all the things I've accumulated, I'd rather be back a child again. So today we're going to like say Joseph, just picture him sitting on the balcony, not quite 40 years old, and he's reached the highest level. You couldn't achieve anything more, and maybe he's looking troubled or something, thinking about something. They say, Joseph, you've got everything. You run Egypt. You have a beautiful wife, 2 sons. Why are you troubled? And he says, I have some things in the past that have to be taken care of. And now we're going to see how, in the next few weeks, how the Lord takes care of him. But first, I want to look back and look at his brothers and some of the things that they did. And then when you see what they've done, it's easy to believe why they would be cruel enough to sell Joseph into slavery and lie to Jacob and tell him, your son was killed when he wasn't. All right. So let's go back to chapter 34. And yes, we were in 41 last week, because the following chapter from last week is the one where it shows them of Canaan about to go into Egypt. And I want to explain how miserable their life is right now, and what sowed the seeds to do this. All right. We all know Jacob had 12 sons. You probably might know, might not know, but he did have one daughter by the name of Dinah. 34, 1-7. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Give me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel, in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. Well, let's set the stage here. So I guess it was maybe the custom then, the young girls would get together and visit different cities and stuff. In this city, small, probably little town of Shechem, Jacob had settled in. There she met a man, and it says rape. There's various of rapes. There's just like you think of invaders pillaging and hurting someone. And this was probably more or less severe, and it shows that he had concern for the girl and wanted to marry her. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Still wrong what he did, but even, let me close these doors. Even in the Old Testament law, most sexual sins were punishable by death, but a sin like this, it was like the option was to marry the girl or pay the debt. So it was bad, but it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. But Jacob's brothers show up, and they're mad, and they're angry, and they're ready for blood. So this sets the stage. It will affect the lives of all the children of Jacob over the next few decades. So Hamor attempts to patch things up and makes a proposal to Jacob and his sons. Verse 8. And Hamor communed with them, saying, The soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give her him to wife. So he really seemed to care for Dinah. It wasn't just like an assault. And make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get your possessions therein. And Shechem said unto her father, so he says to Jacob and to the brethren, Let me find grace in your eyes, and what you shall say unto me I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as you shall say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. So you see this Shechem, named after the land he's living in, he really wants Dinah. He's saying, I think he's making his case, apologize, saying, I'm sorry, but I really love this girl. Let me have her to wife, and I'll give you anything I have. So we're seeing that this event here doesn't seem quite as bad here, and the family's trying to reconcile. So Jacob's family, supposing to represent one of the few families on earth that serve the God in heaven, we see the treachery that they begin to develop here. Verse 13, Jacob and his sons deceive. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully and said, because he had defiled their sister. So they were scheming in their minds now what to do. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this will we consent unto you. If you will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised, then will we give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone. All right. The family seems willing to go along with this, but let me note how his son, first it says, verse 13, and the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully. So they're already, before they said this, it's planned in their mind. They're asking the grown men to do something that is incredibly much of a sacrifice. Going through this horrible pain that they do to babies so you can't remember it. They're asking their men to do that. And in their mind, knowing that even they're asking to do this horrible thing only so they can kill them. So this is right down cold-blooded, mean and murderous. And then so they give this proposal, not as a desire, to make peace with them, make amends, but to kill them. So this is nothing but premeditated murder. And we'll see what goes on, continues here in verse 18 to 24. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So they were willing to do this. They're going to make this deal to make this happen. And the young man deferred not to do this thing because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. So he's probably a good man when he talks about here. Now these are the Hamor, these are the Canaanites. These were the ones that had settled the land that 400 years later, the Israelites would take over. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came into the gate of their city and communed with the men of their city, saying, these men are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein for the land. Behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters for our wives, and let us give them our daughters. So they're ready to mix in. Probably this isn't the Lord's plan, but this also isn't the way he wanted it to go down. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people. If every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. I imagine some of the guys listening to them when he gives this proposal are like, well, what? wait a second here. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. So there could be a little bit of treachery here out of his father, or maybe they were thinking about themselves as well. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son, and hearken all that went out of the gate of his city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city. So now this is about, probably several hundred years after the Tower of Babel. So that's when the people scattered. And so I imagine there's towns all throughout Canaan. It's probably not a giant city. It might even be the size of Crisfield, but even if it was the size of Marion, it's still a good amount of men, maybe 50 men living there. But, so Jacob's sons couldn't take out 50 healthy men, but men in this condition, it's slightly different. So as we move to see what they did here, we go to verse 25. And it came to pass on the third day when they were sore, I think maybe it was at its peak then, so they were at their weakest, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. When you read this verse here, it almost makes it sound like it was just them two. Right. Maybe they could have had their hired hands that Jacob worked with them. And I want to point out Simeon and Levi. When you read this, it makes you wonder, are they the ringleaders when Joseph was sold into slavery? And there's something Joseph does to Simeon, that makes it look like he might have been the worst. When Jacob pronounces his blessings on the sons, this comes out. Simeon is never given a tribe. Basically, he's within Judah, but he moves around all throughout the territory. So you wonder if these two were the ringleaders of this deception. It says, and they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep and their oxen and their asses and that which was in the city and that which was in the field, and all their wealth and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive and spoiled even all that was in the house. So, you could just imagine, thank the Lord, I've never had surgery. I'm sure maybe you have had, okay, just think how you were, someone was coming at you, it was like the day after you had a child. You're almost, would be helpless, you might as well say. You must be as an infant. And all these men, even if they're big, strong men, if they're in this condition, they're in no condition to fight. And it's like killing children probably to them so easy. So it's a horrible thing what they have done to the family. And they spoil the city, they take all the spoils, they take Dinah back with them. And I don't believe Dinah is mentioned again after this, maybe only in the line of genealogy. Who knows what happened to her? She probably loved her husband and just mourned the rest of her days, and probably said, who are these cutthroats of brothers? Maybe down our mom and your mom said, talking about all their brothers they had. But so they wipe out the town and do this. So verse 30, I'll continue reading verse 30 to 31, finish out the chapter. So after it's all over the next day, and you see the village maybe burning where they burn it down to the ground, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. I being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me. I shall be destroyed, I and my house. So Jacob saying, what you've done is going to cause serious trouble. So it's like one family comes into a nation and we've took out a city, this whole nation is going to come against us. But even then, they don't seem to be repentant. Verse 31 closes out, and they said, should he deal with our sister as with a harlot? Okay, no, he shouldn't have, but you don't go to this extreme. So there's a lot of anger and hate in Simeon and Levi, and it's going to come out later, especially when they see how Jacob behaves to Joseph. And at this time, Joseph is still small. So there's problem number one. They took out a city, they burned it. The inhabitants of Canaan are probably frowned down upon them. And so Jacob has to get up and move, which is going to cause something in the next chapter, which will cause another problem in their lives. So chapter 35. Now, because of the previous events, Jacob and his family is forced to move, and I want to comment on something even back further in Genesis, but let me read the first 4 verses of chapter 35. And God said unto Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. So when he used deception to get the birthright, Esau was mad enough to kill him, so he had to flee and initially go to Canaan. Then Jacob said unto his household, or to Laban, to his uncle Laban. Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with them, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. And let us arise and go into Bethel, and I will make thee an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. I don't know what it is with those people those days, but even in the family of Abraham, there's obsession with foreign gods and things of that nature. Remember the children of Israel, put away your foreign gods, toss in your earrings and all that stuff. Where did they get the foreign gods? Let's go back a little bit further. Genesis 31:19. When Jacob was still with his father-in-law Laban, and he was about to flee with his wives and his sons because Laban had been deceptive with him over those 20 years. 31:19. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. So Rachel took Laban's gods with her. Why on earth would she do that? Okay, and this invokes Laban. Let's continue in that chapter, verse 30 to 35. You know, he pursues Jacob, he catches up with him. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because this is Laban talking to Jacob, thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? So it seems like that was one of the main reasons Laban was pursuing him. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, listen what Jacob says here, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me, and take it thee, for Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. So, you know, always here, be careful of your words. Jacob foolishly just says that right off the cuff, I guess in anger because he accused that, because he had no idea someone would do this. Little did he know his wife Rachel had taken those gods. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. So, and then he went out in Leah's tent. Rachel's the last one. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said unto her father, let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. So she hides them basically underneath of her. And Laban goes out and can't find them. So he probably thinks, well, they've got rid of them somewhere, but they certainly had to take them. So these are very key passages of Scripture, and Rachel might have sealed her own fate by doing this act. So now flash ahead. They've moved into Canaan, they settled, they've had this rebellion, they've burned this city, and because of this, they have to move. Chapter 35, verse 5. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So they were extremely outnumbered, but the Lord put a strong fear upon them. The Lord knows, I have a plan for this people. They need to continue to exist, and nothing's going to happen to them. So he put a supernatural fear on the cities. But Jacob is, it's soon going to be time for them to leave that area for now. And this is the beginning stage, but the Lord is protecting them. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Elon Bakath. All right, and here we see the Rebekah's nurse, that's Jacob's mother, the one I guess probably who went with her when Abraham sent someone to find a wife for Isaac. She dies there. So they're on the journey. And in verse 9, God again appears to Jacob. So many times, though, despite his treachery, Jacob, I guess, has something in him that the Lord sees. You know, he appears into him this where he stairway to heaven. He sees when he first flees to go to his uncle Laban. He appears to him right night before Esau when he wrestles with him, and Jacob says, let me go, and he's done not till you tell me your name, and that's when he touches Jacob's hip. And now again the Lord appears. Verses 9 to 15. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. So now the term Israel, the nation today, comes from this. The whole story of the Old Testament, the Israelites are now named after their father Jacob. The Lord's name had changed. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply, a nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And we, of course, know all these things happened throughout the next centuries. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac for thee, I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And God went up from him in the place where he had talked with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured it oil thereon. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel. So Lord spoke to him, tell him to move on, still has a plan for you, still going to make a nation for you. So begin this process of moving to another section of Canaan land. And then tragedy strikes. Verse 16. And they journeyed from Bethel, and these were but a little way to come to Ephrath, and Rachel travailed as she had hard labor. Probably brought about because of this journeying. They had to pick up everything and leave because of what Simeon and Levi did. And it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass as her soul was departing, so as she had given birth, she was dying, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called his name Benjamin. I think I saw in the Hebrew it might sound like Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And if you think of that sounds familiar, when Jesus is born, Bethlehem, Ephratah, as this is where Jesus would be born almost 2,000 years later. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is a pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Adar. So he's greatly mourning now. Now we know Joseph and Benjamin will be his favorite sons. Rachel, of course, was his favorite wife and probably even the only one he loved. So he's lost his beloved Rachel, who's died giving birth. We know this move probably cost it. We also know Rachel struggled in having children. As long as time, her sisters was having them every year, and she finally had Joseph. And now when she has her second son, Benjamin, she dies. And I think the name she names it Ben-Oni is something to the nature of son of, it's a negative name because she knows it's killed her. Does it say?
Mine says son of my sorrow.
Son of my sorrow. And Benjamin, does it say?
Son of the right hand.
Son of my right hand. So Jacob changes his name, so I guess he won't have a cursed name on him the rest of his life. So we have that incident. So we have the treachery of Simeon and Levi causing them to move, caused Rachel going back, stealing the household gods, which Jacob, unbeknownst, may have pronounced a curse on his own wife and ended up her dying. Simeon is second born, Levi's third, and then we have the oldest Reuben. And this verse 22 briefly tells what he did. And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Okay, remember Jacob's got 4 wives, the sisters Leah and Rachel, and each of their handmaidens. So this isn't technically it's like, I guess, your father's or your stepmother, you might as well say, Reuben, and he sleeps with her. So this is following these things are, even though this predates the law, these family things were forbidden. Now they might be practiced by the heathen Canaanites in the area, but these were followers of the God of Abraham. So there will be later consequences for this. Reuben loses his firstborn rights because of this. So you have Reuben sleeping with his stepmother, Simeon and Levi murdering that family, deceiving them, caused them to be circumcised. And then don't forget what we talked about a couple weeks ago, the 4th son, Judah, who went with the harlot, so he thought, and it turned out to be his daughter-in-law, and she became pregnant with him, and he was ready to put her to death, so he found out he was the father of them. So these are rough sons of Jacob. Now I believe the Lord begins to move in their life, and it seems like Judah almost becomes a spiritual leader of the family later. And from him, the kings of Israel, King David, and Jesus' line comes from him. But at the time, you say these are bad boys, and they're probably like the four older ones, or maybe the leader of the group. And we see Reuben and Judah were both sympathetic. Reuben was going to actually rescue Joseph. Judah had a plan. He was the one said, well, let's not kill him. So I'm thinking Simeon and Levi were ahead of this, and if they had just been by themselves, they might even kill Joseph. But of course, the Lord had a plan for them. So now we're going to list the family of Jacob and update where they are right now. So after Reuben's fall is described here. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. All right, so I'm almost out of space. See if I can get a little. All right, so Jacob has 4 wives. His first one's Leah. That's the one he was tender-eyed, whatever that means, not that good looking. Rachel's sister, and he has 6 sons by him. I'll try to abbreviate. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, the first 4 born. And then later he has Issachar and Zebulun. I don't know if you ever noticed, Issachar is basically Isaac with a couple letters added to it, so he's probably named after his grandfather Isaac. All right. Then her sister, Leah's sister, Rachel, he has 2 children, Joseph, of course, who's the main story here, and then Benjamin, who she has dying. So 6 by Leah, 2 by Rachel. And the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid. So Rachel has a handmaid named Bilhah. And her 2 are Dan and Naphtali. And probably these 4 born by handmaids were probably looked down a little bit more because they weren't from the main 2 wives. Whereas these were exalted the most. Even these probably had a little bit more prominence. And was that the one that, yeah, so this is the one that Reuben slept with, Bilhah. And then the sons of Zilpah. This was Leah's handmaid, and she had 2, Gad and Asher. And also Leah had Dinah. She was the one who had the daughter. These names sound familiar. Now look in the Jewish tradition, Bilhah and Zilpah, they might have been sisters themselves, only not. And maybe one even suggested that they were daughters of Laban's concubines, like as these were like Jacob's concubines. Their mother might have been. That's not in the Bible. We don't know. But were the names sounding the same? They might have been related, and have so. At most, these all are at least half brothers, and they might even be a little bit. And even on their mother's side, they might even have somewhat of a relation to each other. So that summarizes the 12. These are the sons, so let me read them again. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun. Sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan-aram. All right, now we come up to verse 27, close out. And because he's not mentioned, you don't think about it, but Isaac's still living at this time. Isaac, even as the ages are gradually going down, Isaac actually lived 5 years longer than his father Abraham. And Jacob will mention his age when he meets Pharaoh eventually. Verse 27, and Jacob came unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180. And Isaac gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. And mentions here he's old and full of days. 5 or 6 generations before, they were living 300, 400, 500 years. So you're seeing the age longevity start to decrease as we're getting into modern times. By modern, I mean where we have more archaeology and history written down, things of that nature. So the age and Genesis almost takes it to our present age now. I figured out in my head Jacob was about 90 when Joseph was born. Isaac was 60 when Jacob was born. So Joseph is about 30 here. So about the time Joseph was about to be promoted to right hand of Pharaoh, his grandfather Isaac was dying back in Israel. So that's what the situation is. What I've done this week is take a look back at some of the actions of the brothers and other family members of Jacob. It's not a surprise that they behaved this way to Joseph when you see the things that they were capable of doing. And no doubt, because the devil knew that God had chosen this family, he attempted to defy and destroy them. So they're pretty messed up right now. So back to Joseph. For him, life can't get any better. You know, he suffered, his suffering is over. But for his brothers and family, not the same. And beginning next week, we begin to see how God, as horrible as their situation is, puts this together. And we'll set the stage now. So now Joseph is ruling. The 7 years of good are over. The famine has been going now. And, you know, his plans are coming to pass. And Pharaoh is probably even more impressed seeing exactly what this man said is done. And everything he's doing is just right. And now Joseph is about to deal with the issues of his past. And we'll begin to see next week how the Lord starts to put this together. All right. Any comments or questions? All right. Lord, we thank you for this time together. I ask that you bless each one today. Bless the sermon this morning, Lord. May souls be saved and reached in Jesus' name.